back to Good Things Utah. Time now for an important mental health check.
In the sponsored segment, we are talking about suicide prevention with Carol Rudell from the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's start with the program Live On. What's its mission and what is the state of Utah right now?
So Live On is a public campaign. It's a public-private partnership to raise awareness not just about suicide. We all know suicide exists, but we want to be active. We want to do something to prevent it. So it's challenging everyone to learn more and to do more within their family and friend network.
Let's talk about our state right now. I think a lot of the time we think this is something very alarming for teens. We're watching numbers of teens rise or fall, but you say it's the middle-aged men right now. Explain.
So when we look at who is dying by suicide in the state of Utah, youth have always been consistent last couple of decades in terms of numbers and rates of death. But our men tend to be our highest. Reasons, maybe a variety of reasons. There's no single cause for suicide. Some people come at it from depression or anxiety or those things, but often the tipping point is the life events. Maybe they're going through a crisis at that age. Maybe there's a change in employment or a loss of employment, a change in family dynamics. So men are our highest rate of suicide death.
And Carol, are we talking about in the state of Utah or across the nation?
I'm speaking about the state of Utah's data.
And so numbers are higher than the numbers across our country.
Yes, other states do have higher rates in other age ranges. Our men tend to use a very lethal means, using firearms to die, and that's more lethal, of course, say, than some other means. But yeah.
It's a tough topic because we're saying there's not one reason. There's so many factors. So I would think same goes for the warning signs, but what are some of those to keep an eye out for?
Absolutely. You know, warning signs are things like, what are you hearing? Are people talking about dying or not coming back or not waking up? Is their behavior changing? Are they more likely to not show up for work or be late or not as communicative or not joining in activities, those kinds of things. So you're looking for changes in behavior. And then finally, those tipping points, those events that happen. Those are the three things we look for: what we hear, what we see, and those life events.
And Carol, when do we jump in? I think there is this push to check in on grandparents, check in on aunts, uncles, everyone, truly. But when do we? Sometimes we think, oh, is this a phase? What do we do?
You know, from my perspective, if I'm going to check in with somebody, it just shows I care. So you can do it anytime, right? We can be active and say, hey, I've noticed things are out of sorts lately. What's up? Just having a conversation and connecting, and certainly learning the skills to help someone. We have the playbook, which is available on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, both English. We have Live On Latino, and we have a military playbook that really helps people take just 10 5-minute lessons and learn about suicide prevention and what each of us can do.
Something else that's important to learn today is that our state does have so many resources, you say, more than anywhere else, but we just might not know they're available.
Right. We definitely have resources. We certainly have 988, which is our suicide and crisis lifeline, and you can call that anytime. And they're just this trained group of people who are more than happy to walk people through crisis, help them find services. We have mobile crisis outreach teams across the state that will actually go to someone in crisis. We have receiving centers where someone can go and just de-escalate and receive care. We also have a ton of other services through many of our private partners, such as NAMI Utah, our American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, offering support groups, bereavement groups, ways for people to move on after a suicide death too.
Is depression and anxiety always a precursor?
Not always. I think, you know, we all went through COVID, a time when my anxiety certainly went up. It doesn't mean I will lead all the way down the path of a suicide, right? But it could be there are things there that are the tipping point, are ways that prevent us from moving forward. Some of us are more resilient than others, and some of us just need to have that hope given to us and inspired within us that we have value and living is what's hopeful, right?
Because you might be high functioning, but you might have your moments where you dip and you have the suicidal ideation. So what can we do as friends and family to just offer, just to be there, just to make your presence known that you are a safe person?
All of that. Connect.
Yeah.
Talk with people. Check in with your friends. Check in with your neighbor who's a single. Check in with your friends. Check in with friends at church or whatever. It really is a matter of each of us taking that action and connecting with people. That's our biggest way to prevent suicide, is to connect with people so that we all have hope.
If anything we've learned from COVID is that we were connecting more.
We were,
and surprisingly, the suicide rates went down, but anxiety and depression went up.
Right.
But if we can kind of harness what we learned during COVID, the silver lining, then maybe we'd be a little better off. But we can always have those resources available, and thanks to the health department. Suicide prevention, liveonutah.org is that campaign. And if you or a loved one is suffering from a crisis right now, there is that number right there on your screen, 988. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you so much for having me today.
And our thanks to Live on Utah and the Utah Department of Health and Human Services for sponsoring this segment.